Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday, it is 3 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 novels of suspense. My current book is called One Wrong Word, and my brand new book, which comes out September the 9th, is called All This Could Be Yours, about a debut author with a surprise best-selling novel who realizes that her Faustian bargain is about to come terrifyingly due. And that will be out on September the 9th. As I've told you can remember that, you all, because it comes out on the same day as Dan Brown's new book. I know, Adele, the secret to the sequel to the Da Vinci Code comes out on the same day as this book. So every time you hear about Dan Brown's new book, we love Dan Brown, you say to yourself, oh yes, and my friend Hank Phillippi Ryan's new book, All This Could Be Yours, comes out on the very same day. But we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the fabulous First Wife's Shadow by the terrific and iconic Adele Parks. You all, I promise you, and I see you all here. Katie Crutchfield, Shannon Hansen is here, Deborah Press, Sue Street, Susie Baldwin, Betty Fellows says, this should be exciting today. Susie Baldwin says, hi. You know Adele Parks. And if you don't, you are so lucky because you will get to read First Wife's Shadow. And I promise you right here, right now, you will not be able to put it down. It is quite astonishing. We welcome Adele from just outside of London. Thank you for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. Lovely to be here.
It's fantastic. Let me just ask you, I know this is a really weird question, a strange question, but when you're writing a book like this, Renee says, love Adele's books, and of course you do. When you're writing a book like this, and there comes to a point where you know it's going to work. I mean, that you just know after all this stress and anxiety and fear and worry and working as hard as you can, that you know it's going to work. Do you have that ever? Do you ever feel that?
Well, so I think we work differently, and it'd be very interesting because I think every time you get a writer on your show, they probably have a slightly different way of working, and we all get there in the end. I'm quite the plotter. So I always know my ending. And if I know my ending, I believe every single word in the book can work harder because it knows where it's going. And specifically with these type of twisty-turny books, I find that a huge sort of comfort, almost a crutch that I if I'm losing my way in any shape or form, I think, right, where am I going? What am I trying to talk about? Where's this ending? All that said, on the 2 or 3 occasions out of the 24 novels that I have written that I haven't known my ending, I have found terrifying, the entire process, terrifying. But even when I know my ending, and even though I've done it 24 times, and that was my 24th novel, I still have a moment where I think, is this the book that goes wrong? Is this the book that I can't keep the standard? Is this the book that they suddenly say, yeah, that's not for me? So I don't really settle into a moment where I think, wow, look at me, aren't I clever? I've done it. Right up until my editor, who I send it to, says to me, yeah, okay, Adele, it's another Adele Parks, we're fine. And it's that moment I think, okay, I can pour a glass of margarita or something, I can relax. But I think in a way that keeping myself on my toes is part of the joy of it. And certainly anyone who rests on the laurels with anything in their lives tend to come for a sort of nasty fall straight afterwards. So I don't mind having that sense of tension.
I agree with you that the people who say, oh, my book is fabulous throughout, you sort of worry about that. But still, there's a moment as you're writing your outline, as you're writing your plot, that you don't know exactly if it's going to work. And then there's a moment that you do. I guess what I'm getting at, is it still fun? Is it still fun to explore?
The writing is so much fun. I love the writing. I love events, actually. I love my job. I wanted to be a writer ever since I was a little girl, age 5. I've written in several different genres. I started off in romantic fiction. I've written historical fiction, works set in World War One, and I write psychological thrillers. I think psychological thrillers are the ones that are the most fun because of the twists and turns. And I think in First Wife Shadow, I have the twist that I call sort of the twist of my career. I do feel that there's a sort of jaw-dropping moment on chapter 28. I really hope you're flicking back through the book going, no, you are kidding me. How did I miss that? But at the same time thinking, well, obviously it couldn't be anything else. And I think when I hit on that idea, that's when I have my first buzz, my initial buzz, is when I have an idea. And look, we all have ideas all the time. There are so many ideas for books out there. And how I approach it is I then question myself, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And really sort of interrogate the plot. And when I finally get to the end of the interrogation of the plot, and there's usually one final twist, that's when I have my little buzz knowing, okay, I know where I'm going. It's going to be good. Here we go.
I love that you have a good time writing it, because everything that you just described happened to me reading First Wife's Shadow. You know, I read it as a reader because it's enjoyable and fun and twisty and surprising. And I'm such a fan of your writing. And so it was fun to read. But as a writer reading this, I'm always sort of double checking to think, can she manage this? Is she going to pull this off? How is she going to have, as you say so brilliantly, another Adele Parks book, as your agent and editor says, another Adele Parks book? And I want to talk to you more about that in a minute. But let me welcome you all. So many of you here today. Sue Street is here, and Julie Brinkley is here, and Shannon Hansen is here. I love that you all, Katie, so nice to see you all, Vicki Gregory, Betty Fellows, Sue Street, hooray, love that you are here. If you are new, though, to Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze, you have picked the best day to come, because we get to talk to Adele Parks and talk about her new book, First Wife's Shadow. You know that Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic 5 years ago now by the fabulous duo of Caroline Levitt and Jenna Blum to keep us all reading and keep us all writing and keep us all discovering new books and maybe finding a fabulous new favorite book. And we are going strong. You also know that we also do a giveaway every week of the featured book. This week we are giving away, well, we're not giving it away. I'm keeping this one. Adele Parks and her publisher are giving away a copy of First Wife's Shadow. So leave a question or a comment or just general admiration and adulation and delight in the comments, and you will be entered to win a copy of First Wife's Shadow. I'm going to stop talking in a minute, but first let me just tell you a bit about Adele Parks, and then she will be in the spotlight. Adele Parks, MBE, is the author of 23 best-selling novels. Is that right, Adele? 23 still?
That's the 24th now.
This is the 20th. Whenever I get these bios, I think, I wonder if this includes the new book, including the recent Sunday Times hit Just Between Us and the Audible #1 sensation, One Last Secret. Over 5 million English editions of her work have been sold, and she has translated into 31 different languages. And that is now readers and authors doing math. And we're not going to do that, but just that is a lot of zeros. That is a lot of zeros. Her #1 bestsellers, Lies, 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 and Just My Luck, were both shortlisted for the British Book Awards and have been optioned for development in film and TV. She is an ambassador of the National Literacy Trust and the Reading Agency, two charities that promote literacy in the UK. She was born in North Yorkshire and has lived in Botswana, Italy, and London, and is now settled in Guildford, Surrey. In 2022, she was awarded the MBE by King Charles III for services to literature. That is incredible. And all that is what goes into writing such a terrific, riveting, propulsive, surprising, twisty novel as First Wife's Shadow. So now, Adele, finally, your turn. Tell us a little bit.
How do I talk about it? Yes. So here's my copy. This is the copy I'll be sending to whoever leaves a question or a comment and wins it. And before we started, Hank said to me, how are you going to talk about this book without giving anything away? So I have perfected this little pitch, and it is spoiler free. The book is about a woman called Emma. She's in her 40s and she is a CEO of a wind energy company. I was really excited about writing Emma because she's single, she's completely sorted, she's sensible, she's ambitious, she has great friendships, she's a godmom, she's got a full life. And I wanted to have that character rather than the character we're quite often told is the perfect life, which is a married woman with 2 children, which can I say can be the perfect life. And that's lovely if it is, but it isn't everybody's perfect life. Emma is this incredibly sorted human being. However, she's so sorted that it's almost bordering on controlled. Her day starts every day with a particular smoothie that she, a kale smoothie that she has to have at a certain time, which is practically the crack of dawn. Then she goes for a run. She times herself to the minute for how long she's allowed on her social media before she has to head off to the station for her commute into London, and so on. Very, very, very constrained life. Why? Well, Emma's family, her father was an alcoholic. And when she was a little girl, he was driving under the influence of alcohol and he killed himself and her mum. And that level of chaos and trauma has obviously had a deep impact on her. And all she wants to do in her life is keep everything sorted and sort of improve the world as much as she can, which is why she works as a CEO of a wind energy company. She's concerned about the environment. She's, concerned about her friends. She puts other people first. And that's all well and good until at a work conference, she meets a younger man, over a decade younger than her, Matthew. He's a photographer. He's not in the slightest bit wealthy, where she definitely is. And as I've mentioned, he's that bit younger, but he's super hot. You'd be pleased to know it's that's a nice little part of the book. He's super hot, but also more importantly, he understands Emma's approach to life because he's also had very early tragedy. He was married to his very long-term childhood sweetheart or teenage sweetheart, and she died just a year ago. So he's relatively newly widowed. And as a widower, he has a little bit more depth. He seems to understand Emma. He seems to always be a step ahead of Emma's needs. He isn't intimidated by her career. And so they start a whirlwind romance, and actually it moves at a pace. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that very soon their relationship is such that, they're set to have a future together. However, Emma's friends are completely concerned that Emma has thrown her sort of caution to the wind and thrown herself into this relationship. It's so unlike her. And they start to question Matthew's motives because Emma is wealthy, and they wonder, could he be a gold digger? Is he trustworthy? Emma herself doesn't have any of those problems. She's not concerned about that, but she is increasingly having a very out of character concern. She's becoming increasingly jealous of the dead wife, the ex-wife. And she's starting to see herself not as a second chance for Matthew, but as a second choice. If somebody divorces, you know that they didn't want to be with their first partner, and you are definitely a second chance. But she becomes quite obsessed with this idea that she is just a second choice. And strange things start to happen, inexplicable things. We wonder as a reader, can we trust Emma's jealous friends? Can we trust Emma's new love interest? Or can we trust even Emma herself as these peculiar things, these terrifying things start to occur in her life? How's that, Hank? Spoiler free?
I'm just sitting here in awe, and the audience is just applauding, saying, oh, yes, Julie Brinkley says, you've got me hooked already. Absolutely so. And that is, and I will tell you all that what Adele has just related is just about chapter 1. So she has not given away a thing. There's so many wonderful parts of this book. And one of the things that I just latched right onto was the idea of her intense curiosity and jealousy about the first wife. Because when you're in the beginning of a relationship and you know the feeling of falling madly in love with someone, and you're trying to sort of see if it's okay, and you just sort of want to, can you just tell me a little bit more about her. And you don't want to step over the line. You don't want to be naggy or pushy or aggressive. But on the other hand, everybody's saying, sounds super good, says Denise. Sue Street says, sounds so good. You don't want to be pushy. But on the other hand, there is someone that he is grieving. And now here you are. And Emma's smart. Emma is a truly smart woman who's in control of her life. And she just needs to know more. Where did that element of the book come from and why?
I think it's interesting. I think, gosh, humans, we're so complex, aren't we? Obviously. But one of the, in different books, I have different themes and different emotions are explored. One of the most extraordinary emotions for me is jealousy, because I think we all suffer from it at some point or other. And I think actually the world is currently set up to almost feed jealousy, almost want us to be jealous of one another. And yet I believe it is literally the most useless emotion we can possibly have. If we could somehow evolve out of it, it would be really good for us. So obviously the emotion of love is really positive. Even anger can be really helpful because it can get you motivated to change something. But jealousy is just destructive, and it tends to be destructive mostly for the person who feels jealousy, although obviously it can spill out to a victim that is the reason for the jealousy. That can happen. And I thought, quite often I'll get a theme like jealousy and I think, okay, what's the most ridiculous situation to be jealous of? And I thought, the most ridiculous thing to be jealous of is somebody who's already dead, because you've won, right? You're alive. That person's dead. Even if Emma couldn't have a relationship with Matthew, she at least is in the living world where it's an opportunity, where Becky, the dead wife, that's no more. And yet this sensible, rational woman knows that on paper, but still thinks, am I good enough? Am I beautiful enough? Am I funny enough? Am I clever enough? Did he love her more intensely? Even when they're making love, she starts to think, did he do this with with Becky? Emma thinks, did he do this with Becky? Was it better with Becky? She also is looking for kind of the faults with Becky. Again, if you're divorced, if you meet somebody who's divorced, there must have been some faults. There must have been some problems. You may still obsess about them. But if somebody has died, perhaps that person stays on a pedestal, and that is sort of what happens with Becky, and that's sort of what Emma is up against. So I thought it was a really interesting way of exploring something that all of us have felt, maybe not in such an extreme way. I hope not in such an extreme way, but all of us have felt that little niggle. And it makes you feel so uncomfortable with yourself, because we should all be better than jealousy. It shouldn't really be part of us. As I say, it should have evolved out by now.
And one of the things that you harness so gorgeously is that when the very in control, very successful Emma begins to be eaten away by jealousy, the rest of her very controlled life begins to sort of come off its pins and crumble. And she's not quite sure about herself as much anymore. Can you talk a little bit about that as a use of her own personality?
Yes. So I think all of us have a certain level of sense of self. We by the time we get to our age, the things that you excel at, the things that you probably should still be working on. But we have a sense of self. Emma's in her 40s. As I mentioned, she's been super successful in her career. She has got great friendships. She considers herself rational. That's really important to her. Generous. That's important to her. She's kind. She's responsible. She knows who she is. So when those sort of legs of the table that is Emma start to get chewed away at, and she thinks, well, I'm not being rational here. I'm not being kind here. She's doubting her own friendship. She very quickly loses that sense of self and that sense of her purpose, of what she was always supposed to be about. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? How in the world, popular culture, or just the world as we know it, we're quite often encouraged to have a partner, to find somebody, the one the one that, sometimes we even hear the phrase, that completes us, that makes us whole, all those sort of things. Where in fact, possibly what we should be doing is trying to make ourselves whole without another person. And maybe Emma was initially whole. Then to accommodate this other person, she sort of has to bang out parts of her, has to reject parts of her, or finds parts of her falling apart. And it's terrifying for her. She does actually, and this isn't too much of a spoiler, she gets to a stage where she really is doubting herself. But more than that, everyone around her is doubting her. Her work starts to crumble. Her time management starts to crumble. Just little things, but they lead to much bigger things. I'm trying not to say because they're the fun. They're the fun.
You're doing it perfectly, of course. And it's interesting, too, because you write with such poignancy about a person who is that age. I speak from experience, having been 46 many, many years ago. And you begin to, when there's something that you realize that you may want, love and happiness in that kind of sense, and maybe a different kind of security in the future that comes along with having a partner, you begin to sort of rationalize away things that you might ordinarily, or something that you might see in your friend and say, hey, sweetheart, watch out for that. You begin to create reasons why your friends are wrong. Can you talk a little bit about, Emma was so close to her friends, and they're the ones who are wrong, not her. She can't hear anything against Matthew.
Well, isn't it extraordinary? Because there's a few things that go on with poor Emma. So she's 46. So if she was 26 and fell madly, madly in love and ignored her friends, we'd all go, mm-hmm. That would seem so much part of the course. And indeed, her friends did meet and marry much younger than she did. And in a way, they want Emma to stay still. They do not want Emma to become different, because she's part of their identity too, that they have this woman who is very generous with them. She's very generous with their children. She's godmother to their children. She's available when they need some sort of support. So in many ways, they don't really want her to change. But that's a little bit selfish of them, because there is something, I'm not saying there's a gap or something missing in Emma's life, but something new that she wants, which is Matthew. But she's a little embarrassed by how she feels, because she isn't 26, she is 46, and she is being swept off her feet. And look, I believe, and I really want to believe, that love can happen at any time in your life. But it becomes harder for most of us to still feel that giddiness, and throw ourselves into that sense of the other person, and the irresponsibility of throwing ourselves into the life of the other person becomes harder, because we've already built a quite established life around us by the time we're in our 40s or 50s. And I think that's a really delicate thing for Emma to have to confront and deal with personally, and for the people around her to manage. She's actually also, sorry, people, ladies, I think mostly on the line, don't blush, but she's having great sex. She hasn't had that probably ever, but certainly for a long time. She's having the kind of sex you have when you love someone and you trust them and you're vulnerable in front of them. So the hormones are charging, everything's very different in her world. And the worst of it is, her friends dismiss it as, oh yeah, your hormones are charging because you're perimenopausal. So there's this betrayal of what they can think of her. They can't think of her as that giddy in love person, because she hasn't been that before, and they're not ready for this metamorphosis. So it's very easy for her to become offended and to want to push their views aside, irrespective of whether there might be a nugget of truth in their views, or whether they actually are quite jealous and destructive and standing in her way.
And it's interesting, too, if you've just joined us, we're talking about First Wife's Shadow by Adele Parks. Vicki Gregory says, love the complexities in these relationships. Oh, absolutely. And so I know this is absolutely irresistible. So to run, click, 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 but not right now, because we have a little bit more to talk about. And then one of you lucky crime timers will be able to get a copy of this from Adele. The rest of you, I know it's irresistible. It totally is. One of the things that I thought was so engaging and lovely about Emma, who we love from the beginning, is that she almost begins to feel guilty about being happy. and guilty about letting go and guilty about whether she should give up control of her life to include someone else. And that's so touching.
Yes, I think that comes from her background, the alcoholic father, and the lack of control there. So her mother literally died at the hands of her love, because the father, was drunk at the wheel and the mom was a passenger. And so from that, Emma has, because it happened to her when she was a child, has had a very extreme reaction, which is, I won't allow myself to become vulnerable to another person by putting either my physical or my mental well-being in the hands of anyone else. I will keep hold of it all. But slowly, because she has fallen in love with Matthew, she has to allow that complexity, that vulnerability. She has to trust Matthew if this relationship is going to work. But that sort of peeling back of Emma does make Emma feel vulnerable, feel guilty, feel silly. Emma feels silly sometimes, and she's very ashamed of how she feels about the ex-wife, the dead wife, because she knows that being jealous of a dead person is beneath her. She knows that really she should just pity this woman, but she hasn't seen, when the early days when she hasn't seen a picture of her, she becomes obsessed with literally every woman that walks into the room. And she thinks, is that woman reminding Matthew of his ex-wife, his dead wife? Because maybe that woman looks like, and then she has this moment where she suddenly thinks, wow, what if I'm the person who looks like his dead wife, and that's the reason he's with me. And so there's so much there that poor Emma, who, yes, I do believe we root for Emma, poor Emma has to kind of expose herself and make herself vulnerable. But what else is falling in love if it's not making yourself vulnerable?
We so much want her to be happy, and the physical representation of Emma's control is her house, which is so much a reflection of her wanting to keep her life being absolutely perfect. Can you talk a little bit about that house and why you decided to?
So Emma lives in an incredibly modern, beautiful, state-of-the-art, eco-friendly house in woods in Hampshire. I chose Hampshire because few reasons, but one, Jane Austen lived in Hampshire for a while, so that's a good reason. But also it's beautiful woodland, and seemed a very nice place that Emma wanted to settle. And it actually isn't far from her original family home. So there is a sense that when Emma builds this house, and she builds it from scratch, not with her own pair of hands, but she's project managers building this house back near where her family were from. There's a little sense that she is reconciling with her past, and that she is sort of dealing with what her mom and dad, what her dad went through and what a mum was victim of. And she has built this glass house. Now, everybody, as soon as I say glass house, I think whoever you are, subliminally in the back of your head, there is that, the biblical reference, actually, of, if you live in it's not biblical when it's translated this, but it was originally in the Bible, and then it comes as a modern day saying of, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, which is originally, he who is without sin shouldn't throw stones. And that sense of do not judge until you know you're perfect, I think is something Emma carries. Because I think Emma, as much as I don't want to say there is a problem with my heroine, she is a tad judgy. She thinks she has sorted everything out. So she is prepared to live in a glass house. And a couple of things with that. One, there is a subliminal thing that she is kind of judging the world because she thinks everything about her life is so transparent that people can see her. But secondly, she's a woman living on her own in a glass house in a forest. I say she's asking for trouble, because obviously this book, besides it being about the romance, besides it being about her father's alcoholism and her sense of self, it is a psychological thriller, and there is a genuine threat here. And if you're in a glass house, when she very rarely puts the blinds down, and she can be seen, and she can't, when she sees out, she just sees the black woods, I think she's asking for trouble.
Definitely so. Well, getting to asking, first of all, so brilliant to have that house, because the idea of the paradox of having a place that's transparent, supposedly her protection, is just lovely, and how she feels she can control what's happening on the inside, but she can't control what's happening on the outside, which is
Yes.
exactly the whole premise of First Wife's Shadow. But as an author, I'm being careful here. As I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, we know as readers, put it this way, all of us who are here today, Julie and Denise and Randy and Mary Garrett, reading it, a book called First Wife's Shadow, about a 46-year-old woman falling in love with a fabulously sexy, hunky younger man. There's got to be a reason for writing this book, and there's got to be a reason for calling it this. And so we're waiting for the thing. There's not just one twist, you all. There are twist and twist and twist and twist and twist. But you must have walked such a writerly tightrope, because this book is completely fair, and every single thing is revealed, and there's a clue to every single thing. And when you go back to the beginning and look at it again, which I did, there is not an ill-put word in this. How carefully did you work on this?
Yeah, I do plot before I start. So I do know, I mentioned I know my ending before I start writing. So I believe every word works harder if I know where I'm going with it. And a couple of times that I haven't done that, it has definitely led to tickets. So there is that, but also I think it's one of my responsibilities as a writer. As a writer or a reader, we are, and I'm not just showing off, we are more empathetic. It's science. It's not just me showing off or saying that, not because of any great mystery, but because if you think about it, we're all born with one life. And quite naturally, we see things from that point of view because that's who we are. If you're a reader, you get the opportunity to try on the clothes of endless different people and see things from different points of view. And actually, it really genuinely, there are studies to show that readers are more empathetic. They find it easier to see from other people's points of view. And I think that's the most terrific thing about being a reader and a writer, that we find a way of finding peace. We find a way of looking for connections. This book is a psychological thriller. It's very much about problems and other people having differing viewpoints and clashes and a level of violence. There is all of that in it. But I actually think the book is about peace and understanding other people's points of view. So yes, it was super important to me to keep it fair, to judge it carefully, to whilst at the beginning it very much sets off from Emma's path, we move on and we see other characters come in with what they know that Emma doesn't know. And I think that's so important in life, that we keep an open mind to what else other people might know that we don't know. And I know when I'm blindsided in life, when something happens to me and I think I didn't see it from their point of view, that's actually the most humbling experience you can have as a person. So that's why I write. And so it's such a compliment to me if you think I have got that balance and if I have kept it fair, because besides the entertaining, which is super important to me, and I do want you to have a wild ride. I want you to be guessing the twists. I want you to get some of them, not all of them. I want you to be on that journey with me. But I would also really like it if at the end you sort of go, okay, I get it. That's what we will do as human beings.
It is writing a novel like this, a psychological thriller like this, First Wife's Shadow, is all about what does someone want and how far will they go to get it. And we, the reader, find that out throughout the book. And every page is a revelation about that. It is so much fun to read, you all. Do not miss First Wife's Shadow by Adele Parks. It is fantastic. So many more questions I have, but I know we're running out of time, and I know you all have questions as well. Andrew Ball says, you referenced Jane Austen. Is Emma named as a nod to her? And shall we go on about character names?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of nods in this. The book is actually, I do love Jane Austen, and Emma is perhaps my all-time favorite book because she's a heroine that has a very undeveloped sense of self and really needs to develop it. So I love it. And actually, I named Emma in this book because I feel the name, you can't dislike an Emma. It's impossible to dislike Emma. Just it's a solid name, a decent name, a kind person. She's not too showy. She's not too flashy. She's not too understated. But the importance of naming in this book is actually the wife. The wife is called Becky, Rebecca, and it's actually that's more of a nod to Daphne du Maurier. And if any classical references are in this book, I would more say that that's the nod in this one.
And I knew that her name was Becky, but when I hit it, and I forgot why. And when I hit it in the book, I thought, this is XYZ. And then I thought, oh yeah, I know that. So I'm being very circumspect about this, but I forgot that I knew it. And then it was just offered to me in this marvelous book. I'm going to stop this conversation right now. First by Shadow by Adele Parks. Who else has a question? Let's see what Karen in the back room can come up with. Are you doing any book tours, says Katie. We're asking, are you coming to the US?
Right? Oh, do you know, I would come to the US in a blink of an eye. I really would, because genuinely, you are such enthusiastic readers, and the power of events in America are extraordinary. You just feel very valued as a writer, and I'm sure, Hank, that's your experience whenever you tour. However, I haven't been invited this time around. I very much hope that will be on the cards for next year with my next book, which is called Our Beautiful Mess. Which comes out in the UK in the end of August, but it comes out in the December in the US. It's a really tricky time to bring out a book, a really great time in terms of people buy it for each other for Christmas gifts or holiday gifts, but it's a difficult time to come on tour because nobody wants to go to book events in the middle of the Christmas prep. So I think I need to shift my schedule somewhat. The publishers need to shift my schedule so that it's, springtime and you want me there. But I would come in a heartbeat. I really would.
And all of us on A Mighty Blaze will ask our bookstores, ask our libraries to invite Adele Parks, because we would love to meet
Honestly, I'd come on my own dollar. If you invite me to an event, I would come on my own dollar because we just love it. And I love the States. So, I love and I love the people there, and I would really come. Yeah.
It would be really fun. You can stay at our house. That's just
there we go.
Who has one more question? With 24 books under your belt, says Julie. Hi, Julie. Do you have a character that has lingered and stayed with you?
I really do, Julie. It's a brilliant question because this is a little bit of excitement. Book 25 is about my character, Connie, who was my very first debut character 25 years ago. My little sweet Connie, then aged 28, rolled into the literary world in a rom-com. I wrote a rom-com first, and she was, naive. She was in a book called Playing Away. She did. And she was, hapless, hopeless. She had a lot of lessons to learn. And then 7 years later on, I wrote a book called Young Wives' Tales. And that was a little bit more serious. It wasn't a rom-com. And it had issues that we would identify as Me Too. But in those days, we hadn't identified that, that happening, that thing that happened to so many of us. And Connie is a background character in Young Wives' Tales. And that was more of a sort of family drama. And then a further 10 years after that, so when I was on book 17, I wrote one of my first psychological thrillers called Lies, 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 which was it was a big hit and #1 and all those lovely things. And Connie is in that because I can't let it go. Connie and her friends, she has 4 friends, and I bring their characters to the forefront, and Connie might go to the background, and so on and so forth. But in book 25, very much psychological thriller, very much a dramatic sort of, twisty-turny book. Connie is back. So she has been with me over a period of 4 different books and over a period of 25 years. And actually, back to one of your early questions, Hank, you said, is there ever a moment when you go, wow, this book? I have to say, Our Beautiful Mess was almost an easy book to write because I have lived with this woman for 25 years. She's bounced back and forward into my literary life. And so that character, she knew where she was, and she took me, she wrote it for me. And that was a really great experience for me.
It's interesting you say that you've wanted to write since you were a little girl, age 5, and now Connie has emerged in your psyche as essentially a real person, a person who didn't exist without you. What do you think about that?
I know it's slightly balmy. I mean, when I was about 5, I used to, on my way to school, talk to a blackbird, and I was completely convinced it was the same blackbird. I now realize as a 56-year-old that was not the same blackbird. But I was convinced he was my friend, and it was a trapped person. And inside that blackbird, we just had to find the right spell, and we could get the person out, and they would be my best friend forever. I was a lonely child, obviously looking for friends. But I had this sort of imagination that took me out of myself and took me out of any problems, actually. And my very first novel was written. It was, I mentioned it was a rom-com. It was fun. It was light. But actually, at that time in my life, we'd had as a family a number of very sad bereavements. Things were really quite difficult for me in my 20s. It wasn't a nice period of my life. And I wrote, again, that book to bounce out of what I was really in, to give me some escapism. And I think reading and writing is an opportunity for people to escape sometimes from their own worlds, or not for anything, not necessarily for something hugely dramatic. Sometimes it's just because you're tired and your family are whinging and your boss is banging on about a deadline and you just want to get out of your own world and go elsewhere. And so I really appreciate the fact I've been lucky enough to have an imagination that's allowed me to do that. I do have a wild imagination. I can stand in a lift, and as somebody else gets in the lift, I'll turn to my husband and say, imagine if they had a gun. What would we do? And he's like, just stay in the lift, just be quiet, just sit in the lift. Don't say that out loud, inside thought. So I think it's just who I am. I have that imagination. I think many of us do. I've just been very lucky that I've been given a career that has allowed me to explore it.
Well, we are very lucky and very grateful that you will share this with us. It has been so much fun to talk with you. Let's give away a copy of First Wife's Shadow. We'll spin the wheel of fun and give away a copy of First Wife's Shadow to one of you lucky readers who came with us today. You know that if you are not the winner, and it's going to come up in just a minute, you know what to do. Run, run, run. Yes, Renee Herskowitz. Oh, that's so nice. Mm-hmm. Renee is a veteran of Crime Time, and we love, love, love when Renee wins a copy of the book. And the rest of you, you know what to do. Run, 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 click, click, click. Go get First Wife's Shadow. I know Renee had asked when it's out in the US, and it is out right absolutely now. So as soon as the show is over, you run and get your copy of the book, or take it out of the library, or put yourself on the wait list at the library. It really makes a difference when our books are in circulation. So don't ever think, oh, I can't buy a book. We say yes, no, go to the library. And that is absolutely marvelous. Renee, you know what to do. You'll get some info about how to email me, and we will email Adele, and you will get a copy of your book. Adele, thank you. It has been so much fun to talk with you today about the fabulous First Wife's Shadow.
Oh, Hank, thank you. It's 100% my honor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Well, you'll come back for your next book, I hope, and maybe also to the US in person. That would be absolutely fantastic. The rest of you, do not move, or else if you're going to move quickly and then come back. Come back in about 15 minutes, because at 4 p.m. ET, we will be talking to Lian Zhang about Julie Chan is Dead. It is hilarious and dark and sinister and meta and all about influencers. Look at that cover. And I cannot wait to talk to Lian. This is her debut. So we have a debut novelist at 4 o'clock. We have the absolute gorgeous veteran icon, Adele Parks, at 3 o'clock. We hope you have enjoyed this. So we will see you at 4 p.m. ET. If you can't join us then, one more book I want to tell you about very, very quickly. Next week at 4 p.m. ET, I'm going to show you a book like you've never seen before. At 4 p.m. ET, we will be talking to Kylie Lee Baker about Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zing. I mean, I want to just show you that cover. And I cannot wait to find out what this book is about. I'm starting to read it tonight. But you all, see you at 4 for Lian Zhang. see you at 4 p.m. next week for Bat Eaters. And in the 15 minutes that you have, go get your copy of First Wife Shadow by Adele Parks. You can do it. Adele, thank you for being here today. Thank you all for being here today. We will see you in 15 minutes or next week at 4. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book.